Jai Shri Ram, welcome back. Now today I'll start with Canto 71, the summary of Canto 71. When Bharat reaches Ayodhya after crossing many streams and rivers and passing through different territories and finds the city cheerless and wearing a deserted look, he sets about brooding and speculating as to what may be the reason for this, and speaking to the charioteer about it, enters the palace dejected and disconsolate. Proceeding from Rajgriha in an easterly direction and then surveying and crossing the well-known river Sudama as well as the broad river Vridhini, the powerful and dignified Bharat, a glorious scion of Ikshvaku, crossed the river Shatadru, the modern Satluj, whose stream takes a westward course. Crossing another stream at Ailadhana, a village of that name, and reaching the territory of Parvata and crossing a river which petrified everything thrown into it, he reached the track lying to the southeast and known by the name of Salyakarshana, so called because it abounded in a herb possessing the virtue of extracting a thorn, etc. Gazing on the river Silvaha, so called because it carried away even rocks along its swift stream, and getting purified through bathing in it, Bharat, who was true to his promise, crossed the Shaila hills, heading towards the forest of Chaitra Ratha. Reaching the river Saraswati flowing towards the west and a branch of the holy Ganga at their confluence, he passed through the northern part of the Viramatsya territory and entered the forest of Bharunda. Having duly crossed the swift and thundering river Kulinga, hemmed in by mountains, and reaching the Yamuna, he allowed the detachment accompanying him to rest for the time being, refreshing the limbs of the horses by bathing them and giving the fatigued animals food and rest in the shade of trees, nay, himself bathing and quenching his thirst and taking water from the journey ahead, Bharata proceeded further. The prince, who had undergone propitious rites before embarking on the long journey, crossed speedily by his excellent chariot the great forest lying on the way, which was not frequented even as the wind sweeps through the atmosphere. Finding the great river Ganga associated with the name of Emperor Bhagirath, who was instrumental in bringing the stream to the terrestrial region difficult to cross at the village of Amsudhana, Bharat, a scion of Raghu, hastily approached it with a view to crossing it at a well-known town, Pragvata, where it could be easily crossed. Crossing the holy Ganga at Pragvata, he reached the river Kutikoshtika. Again, crossing the latter, along with the detachment accompanying him, he duly arrived at the village Dharmavardhana. Bharat, son of Dashrath, duly reached the village of Jambu Prastha through the southern portion of the village Torana, and then arrived at the lovely village of Varutha. Having halted for the night in a delightful grove adjoining that village, he drove in an easterly direction to the garden of Ujjihana, a city in which existed a cluster of Kadamba trees. Having reached those Kadamba trees and getting swifter horses yoked to his chariot and allowing the army to come slowly since he had reached his own territory, Bharat, for his part, hastily proceeded further. Having halted that night in the village of Sarvat Tirtha and forded next morning the river Uttanika and other streams on the back of various mountain ponies, and reaching the village of Hastipraksha Ka, Bharat, a tiger among men, crossed the river Kutika, and at Lohita, another village, crossed the river Kapivati too. He crossed the Stanumati at the village of Ekalasala, and reaching the river Gomti, he crossed it near the village of Vinata. And then Bharat quickly reached a grove of sal trees in Kalinga Nagara. Nay, hurriedly driving through the grove during the night, his horses having been completely exhausted, the tiger among men beheld the celebrated city of Ayodhya, founded by King Vaivashvata Manu at dawn, having spent 7 nights on the way, so the tradition goes. Nay, seeing Ayodhya in front of him, Bharat spoke as follows to the charioteer. This well-famed city, consisting of sacred gardens, does not look very cheerful to me. Ayodhya, O charioteer, which was thickly crowded with Brahmins, given to sacrificial performances, endowed with good qualities, and well versed in the Vedas, as well as with wealthy men, and was protected by the foremost of royal sages, looks from a distance to be a heap of white clay. Formerly in Ayodhya was heard on all sides a great confused noise of men and women. I do not hear it today. Indeed, gardens which looked bright with men running helter-skelter on all sides, having ceased sporting in the morning, and after entering them at dusk and sporting the whole night, appear to me quite different. Deserted by gallants, they are weeping, as it were, today. The city, O charioteer, appears to me as converted into a woodland, for high-class men are not seen going out or coming here in conveyances or on the back of elephants or horses as before. The gardens in this city formerly looked excited with joy and enraptured, and were extremely favorable for love contacts of men. Today I find those very gardens bereft of joy in every way, with their trees shedding tears in the form of leaves on the alleys, and piteously wailing as it were. Not even at this hour of sunrise is heard the cry of deer and birds in rut, profusely and inarticulately giving forth their sweet and impassioned utterances. I wonder how a pure and delightful breeze, laden with the fragrance of sandalwood and aloe, and scented with the fume of burnt incense, does not blow today as before. It is not known how has the sound which ever proceeded unstintedly in the past of kettle drums, clay tom-toms, and veenas played upon with a drumstick, palms, or fingers, has ceased today. I perceive unwelcome, portentous, and unpleasant omens of every description. My mind is feeling dejected on that score. The all-round welfare of my near and dear ones is difficult to find, O charioteer, for even when there is no ostensible cause for infatuation, my heart is sinking as it were. Dejected and alarmed, his heart weary and senses extremely perturbed, Bharat speedily entered the city protected by the scions of Ikshvakus. His horses being fatigued, he effected his entry by the western gate, known by the name of Vaijanta, greeted with shouts of triumph by the porters who rose to usher him in. He moved on accompanied by them, sending the porters back with honor, the said Bharat, for his part, troubled as he was at heart, spoke on the spot to the wearied charioteer of King Ashwapati as follows: Why have I been brought to Ayodhya in a hurry without mentioning any cause, O sinless one? My heart is therefore apprehensive of some misfortune, and my composure is vanishing as it were. I observe at this moment, O charioteer, all those indications that have been heard of by me in the past as pointing to the demise of kings. I behold the dwellings of householders unswept, dirty colored, shorn of splendor, and in every way, and with open doors. I find that no oblations have been offered in them to the various creatures, that they are devoid of odor coming from the burning of incense, and bereft of fortune, that members of the household have not been fed in them for many days past, and their inmates look pale. Temples which are no longer adorned with garlands hanging on the gates, whose courtyards have not been swept for the last so many days, and which are devoid of men, do not look charming now as before. Images of gods as well as sacrificial halls have been deserted. Saleable goods such as flowers and garlands do not figure prominently as before in flower marts today. Merchants too in the city, whose hearts are seized with fear due to anxiety, and who feel dispirited because of their business having been brought to a standstill, do not appear as happy as they looked before. Nay, birds and beasts in the temples and other places of worship are distressed. Again, I behold the people in the city, including men and women, in soiled attire, miserable, worried, emaciated, and sorrowful, with eyes full of tears. Perceiving those unwelcome indications in Ayodhya, and having spoken to the said charioteer as above, Bharat drove to the royal palace afflicted in mind. He was filled to the brim with sorrow to see that city, which had shone at one time like Amravati, the capital of Indra in paradise, with its crossroads, houses, and streets desolate, and its doors and bolts soiled with dust. Beholding things distasteful to the mind, things which had never come to pass in his city before, the high-souled Bharat became cheerless and entered his father's apartments, distressed in mind, his head hung down. Thus ends Canto 71 in the AYODHYAKAND of the glorious Ramayan of Valmiki, the work of a rishi and the oldest epic. Now we come to the next canto, that is Canto 72. In the summary, entering his father's apartments and not finding him there, Bharat moves to his mother's apartments, and having communicated to her the welfare of his maternal grandfather and others, on being questioned by her, inquires of her the whereabouts of his father. Kaikai then breaks to him the news of his father's death, attributing it to Sri Ram's exile and holding herself responsible for the latter, and after comforting him, calls upon him to get himself installed on the throne after finishing his father's oblations. Not finding his father in the latter's apartments in the palace, Bharat for his part then proceeded to see his mother in her apartments. Rejoiced to see her aforesaid son, who had long been absent from home, returned, Kaikai for her part sprang on her feet at once, quitting her seat of gold. Immediately on entering his mother's apartments and observing them completely shorn of splendor, the celebrated Bharat, whose mind was given to piety, clasped his mother's lovable feet. Duly smelling his head as a token of motherly affection, and embracing the illustrious Bharat and seating him on her lap, she coolly proceeded to question him as follows. How many nights have elapsed today since you departed from your maternal grandfather's abode, and was not fatigue experienced by you in the course of the long and tedious journey while you rode fast in your chariot? Is your maternal grandfather as well as your maternal uncle Yudhajit enjoying perfect health? And has everything been well with you ever since you left home, my son? You should tell me everything. Questioned thus in endearing terms by Kaikeyi, the lotus-eyed Prince Bharat, for his part, related to his mother everything concerning himself. He said, "Today has elapsed the 7th night since I departed from the abode of my maternal grandfather. My maternal grandfather as well as my maternal uncle Yudhajit are enjoying good health. The animals carrying the wealth and jewels of that King Ashwapati gave to me got fatigued on the way, hence I came away first. Being urged by the messengers carrying the royal message to hurry up, I came away in advance. Be pleased, O mother, to tell me now what I intend to ask. This couch of yours, fit for reposing on and plated with gold as it is unoccupied by the king, who used to grace it every now and then. These attendants of Dashrath do not appear much delighted to me either. The king used mostly to be present here in your apartments. Though I have come here longing to see him, I do not see him today. Nay, I shall clasp the feet of my father. Pray, tell me, even as I ask you, where he may be. Is he in the apartments of Kaushalya, the seniormost of my mothers, infatuated by greed of sovereignty? Kaikeyi, who knew everything in detail, related to Bharat, who knew nothing about it, the whole event, which was so terrible and unpleasant as though it were agreeable to hear. The high-souled and glorious king, your father, who was given to the performance of sacrifices and was the haven of the virtuous, has met the same fate as is destined end of all created beings. Hearing the aforesaid reply from the lips of Kaikeyi, the guileless Bharat, who came of a pious family, fell to the ground all at once, hard smitten with grief caused by the death of his father. Uttering in piteous tones the plaintive words, "Alas, I am ruined," and striking his arms against the floor, the heroic Bharat, who possessed long arms, fell prostrate. Overwhelmed with grief and distressed over the death of his father, Bharat, who was endowed with great glory, then lamented in the following words, his mind being confused and agitated through grief. This couch of my father looked most charming before, like a clear sky adorned with the moon on an autumn night. Devoid of that sagacious king, however, the same couch does not shine brightly today any more than a moonless sky or a sea whose water has been dried up by the fire of universal dissolution. Shedding tears with the sound expressive of anguish from his throat and covering his charming face with a cloth, Bharat, the foremost of victorious men, who felt greatly troubled in his own mind, continued to wail. Perceiving her aforesaid son shining brightly like a god, who closely resembled the young of an elephant and vied with the moon and the sun in splendor, and felt stricken with grief, fallen in a wretched plight on the ground like a bough of a sal severed with an axe in a forest, and lifting him, the mother Kaikeyi spoke to him as follows: "Get up, O king, rise, O highly illustrious one. Wherefore are you lying down here on the ground? Virtuous souls like you, honored in an assembly of men, do not grieve. Your mind, O prince, richly endowed with intelligence, which is ever devoted to charity and sacrificial performances, and which pursues right conduct, follows the injunctions of the Vedas, and is prone to austerities, is steady as the radiance of the sun, is fixed in the orb of the sun. Weeping for a long time and rolling on the floor, Bharat, who was filled with many-sided grief, replied to his mother as follows. Having arrived at the conclusion that the king will most probably install Sri Ram as Prince Regent or perform a sacrifice, I gladly undertook the journey to Ayodhya. Indeed, that calculation of mine has come to be incorrect, and my mind is torn with anguish in that I do not behold my father, who was ever intent on doing kind acts to me and devoted to my good. Of what disease did the king die before I arrived, O mother? How fortunate is Sri Ram and all others by whom father was cremated with their own hands. Surely the illustrious emperor does not know me to have come home. Otherwise, pressing me down, father would have quickly smelt my head as a token of affection. Where is that hand, agreeable to the touch of my father, who did great things without much exertion, that would wipe me again and again when he found me soiled with dust? Pray, announce me soon to Sri Ram, who is unwearied in action, nay, who is my elder brother, father, in the absence of emperor and friend, all in one, and whose beloved servant I am. To a worthy man knowing what is right, an elder brother is a virtual father. I shall clasp his feet as a mark of respect, since he is my support now. What did the king, my father, of firm resolve and unfailing prowess, who knew what is right, had a virtuous disposition, and was highly fortunate, say to my elder brother at the last moment? I wish to hear his last kind message for me. Questioned thus, Kaikai replied as follows, strictly in consonance with facts. That high-souled monarch, the foremost among the wise, departed for the other world, crying, O Ram, O Sita, O Lakshman. Bound by the laws of time, according to which a living being meets his end at the appointed time, like a huge elephant bound with ropes, your father uttered the following parting words. Only those men who are able to behold Ram returned with Sita, as also the mighty armed Lakshman, come back to Ayodhya, will have their object accomplished. Hearing the aforesaid report, Prince grew melancholy at that other unpleasant tidings, and assuming a dejected look, further questioned his mother as follows. Where is Sri Ram, whose mind is given to virtue and who enhances the joy of Kaushalya, now conjoined with brother Lakshman and Sita? Questioned as aforesaid, his mother began duly to relate as follows the unpleasant event, simultaneously with the news of his father's demise, in the tone of breaking a welcome news. Actually, clad in the bark of trees, my son, and followed by Lakshman, the aforesaid prince proceeded to the great forest of Dandak with Sita, a princess of Videha territory. Filled with apprehension to hear the tidings because of his misgivings about the character of his elder brother, Sri Ram, and remembering as he did the greatness of his royal house, Bharat commenced interrogating her as follows. I hope no property of a Brahman was wantonly seized by Sri Ram. I am sure no sinless man, whether wealthy or destitute, was killed by him. Nor did the prince long for another's wife, I am sure. If not, wherefore was my celebrated brother sent into exile to the Dandak forest? Prompted by her feminine nature, which was too well known, Bharat's capricious mother forthwith began to recount her notorious doing precisely as matters stood. Questioned as aforesaid by the high-souled Bharat, Kaikeyi for her part, who vainly accounted her wise merrily, replied as follows: no property whatsoever of a Brahman or anyone else was wantonly seized by Ram, nor was any innocent man, wealthy or destitute, killed by him, nor did the celebrated Ram look on another's wife even with sinless eyes. The moment I heard of Ram's installation as Prince Regent on the throne of Ayodhya, my son, your father was in fact asked by me for the sovereignty of Ayodhya in your favor and banishment of Ram. Following his own truthful nature, your father thereupon did as he was asked by me. Accompanied by Lakshman, Ram was accordingly sent into exile along with Sita. Missing his beloved son, Ram, and stricken with grief over his separation from that son, the highly illustrious emperor met his end. Let the throne of Ayodhya be accepted by you now, O knower of what is right. Indeed, all this has been manipulated by me in this wise for your sake. Do not yield to grief nor to remorse, my dear son, but have recourse to firmness. Indeed, the existence of the city of Ayodhya as well as this kingdom, which is free from trouble, is dependent on you. Therefore, speedily performing with due ceremony the funeral rites with respect to the king, with the help of the foremost of Brahmins, well versed in the scriptural ordinance, get yourself installed, my son, as the ruler of the entire globe, undepressed in spirits. Thus ends Canto 72 in the AYODHYAKAND of the glorious Ramayana of Valmiki, the work of a rishi and the oldest epic. Jai Shri Ram.